Hello, everyone. Warm welcome to, I think it's the fourth of our CISO talks. And today we have a really interesting topic, given that we have the Cyber Awareness Month, and the theme of the Cyber Awareness Month is back to basics, right? Really want to make sure that we talk today about practical things about cyber awareness, which works, the theories behind, and how to make such campaigns successful, and the do's and don'ts from practitioners. And I'm super happy and lucky that I'm joined today by two wonderful ladies, both doing a really good job in her daily life, working and caring about people. On one side, and this time I start with Dr. Suzie, and I'm only calling her Dr. Suzie because I can't pronounce her last name correctly. So that's me. Maybe Suzie, you do this then later on your own. Suzie is a full academic. She studied at the Royal Holloway University of London, has a PhD in psychology. That's most probably why she always reads me, and I'm always trying to understand what she means. So that's the good thing. She's also a lecturer at the UK universities, and she does this quite a lot. So it's a give and take already, which is pretty nice. And Suzie cares and is very passionate about the way human behaviors intersects with cybersecurity risk. And I think that's pretty much at the center of what we want to talk about, this linkage between risks and what we as humans can do, besides all that technology nonsense, which we see and which we have every time and everywhere, right? And on the other side, we have Caroline Bansraj, also a last name, which everyone pronounces normally wrongly, but I had the pleasure to train it for 4 years. So therefore, I'm good at that one in the meantime. Caroline runs the complete cyber awareness training area for Credit Suisse, and we had the pleasure to work together the last 4 years, I would say, with all kind of campaigns, successful learnings, great feedbacks, and we had our own books, we had our own videos, we traveled the world to do crazy things around awareness. And so therefore, someone who lives and breathes the topic of human and human risk, but caring about people. And besides her training and awareness focus, she has 2 more hobbies, which is chief of staff for a CISO organization, and also keeping the guys honest with numbers and approvals. So she pretty much knows how to run a shop and run a business, at the same time caring about people. So today's topic is really about how to get people engaged in cyber awareness. And it's quite interesting because Andy did a poll before and was asking the people on LinkedIn, what is the main driver for your cyber awareness program, right? So just, why are you doing it? And besides the funny fact that really someone said, oh, we are forced by the C-suite and the investors to do it, which I thought was pretty funny. The majority really says it's about changing behaviors and culture, while I still challenge, if everyone understands this, it's the same way. But the more interesting thing is that 1/3 of the people say we'd have to do it. We just need to demonstrate compliance, right? So the compliance still is a big driver for cyber awareness. And the other poll which Andy did was, how long is your company doing cyber awareness already? And which is not surprising is that 10% said we don't do cyber awareness at all. Obviously, the non-regulated environments, right? Another 10% said, oh, we are just starting it. So that means nearly 1/4 of the people are just getting into the thing, right? While the banks and regulated environments are doing it already for many years. So there's a big gap. And I think that brings me immediately to my first discussion point, the focus on people. And I love a quote which Suzie always tells me, which goes, people believe nothing you tell them, some of what you show them, and everything they tell themselves, right? So this is shows a little bit nicely the dilemma of cybersecurity and why it's such a problem really to reach people. So I think, Suzie, let's start with you before to set the scene from your point of view. Why are you saying this? What is it, what makes the people click and tick this way?
Thank you, Andreas. And my surname is pronounced as Dobrontei, but don't worry about it. I'm happy with Dr. Suzie. I think I really like it, actually. So thank you. And yes, thanks for quoting me as well. What I really mean by this is that organizational security is only really a problem for the security team, but not for the people that we're trying to actually help. And I think it's really important to change the way we communicate about cybersecurity and awareness, and try to get people to understand why it's actually important for them and why they should behave securely online. The internet, impacts all of us. It's a part of everyone's life. So cybersecurity is a part of everyone's life too. And we need to help people to understand that, and help them understand why this is important for them and their families.
So you're saying it's the personal angle which makes a change?
Absolutely. The focus on people and why it's important for them, and an empathetic approach.
Okay, interesting.
People.
Caroline, from your point of view, I see you already jumping. So
I know. So I actually fully support that. It's funny, I did actually see Andy's survey on LinkedIn, and I was so tempted to answer it, but I thought, no, he knows my position on this, and I might start skewing his figures if I just write all of these, been doing it forever, and all of these things. But really interesting on Suzie's quote as well, because I'm a firm believer on this and on the whole continuous approach, because I also believe you tell people once, you tell them again, and then you tell them again, and then there's like a little seed that starts sowing. The other really interesting thing is when we talk about organizational security, when we're talking about cyber security, and I like to view this as the three of us having this conversation, we know this is all about people. And sometimes I like to ignore the fact that we're thinking about organizational security, because from a human perspective, people are going into work, they've got their job to do, they're really, really busy, and quite honestly, there will be often I really don't care, there's a big IT department who are going to sort this out. Whereas if we make it a little bit more human centric, and we actually give them that what matters to them, and that's the telling them once, telling them again and again and again, and using all of those real life examples, then it sets those seeds, and it then starts becoming that kind of normal behavior, and it's something that they if we're telling people why they need to care about it, why it's important to them, giving them those stories about oh, this happened, and going through the steps, and then that kind of starts to resonate, because it feels like it's something that could actually happen to me, and then I'm concerned about it, because I also don't believe that you change your behavior between Monday and Friday 9 to 5. Once something's embedded in you and that's how you do things, you'll do them in your personal security, and not saving your passwords on browsers and saving your credit card details exactly the same way as you won't save and share your passwords in your corporate organization, because that suddenly becomes your way of life.
But let me agree with you. I totally agree with you. But let me challenge that fundamentally based on these two research studies. You saw NIST doing in the US this research with all the embassies and all the government stuff, where they came back and saying, look, guys, we waste so much time and money. We annoy people on compliance and all that stuff. And at the end, if we now look back to the last 10 years, given that a lot of you are still doing things which you started 10 years ago, it's not working. It's not addressing the behavior. And to the more extreme, because in the Forrester wave, they were much broader, right? They were not US government focused. They asked Europe, Asia, and companies, or bigger companies and industries, and where they also came back and said, look, the traditional way of cyber training, cyber awareness is a waste of time and waste of money. If you don't address behaviors, you don't address cyber risks, and with that, the whole topic of measurement and everything comes in. But how does this all fit together then?
So I don't disagree with all of that, and I am at pains when I think that people still view cyber awareness as a compliance issue. It has to be a people and a behaviors and a culture busting issue, not compliance. Yes, of course, the regulated industries and such, and government industries, they have to do this. This is their way of attesting. But I just think that this should be the small part. This should be the kind of fundamentals of these are the things that are related to policies, because that's the right and the responsible thing for any organisation to do. That is never going to shift behaviours, because we all know, any of us who've got mandatory training once a quarter or once a month, however your organisation does it, you see it in your inbox, you do it really, really quickly. And I guarantee if you walk to the floor 3 minutes later, 7 minutes later, 10 minutes later, people couldn't even tell you the modules that they did, let alone the content of them. So I think the difference is that, and I agree with all of those reports, it's not the right way to do it. And the right way to do it, again, I believe, is that personal involvement, that kind of giving it some integrity from a person, not from a corporate stance.
Mm-hmm. Suzie, how do you see that? You know, how, because you create a lot of professional content, right, for CyberSafe and others. And so with the storytelling, you know, it's your job or your team's job to make things insightful and address exactly what Caroline just said. How do you feel when you see such reports that, look, we wasted money, energy, and time the last 10 years?
Yes, especially going back to what Caroline was talking about. I never liked separating or looking at security awareness and cybersecurity as an organizational thing, and then also something that you do at home, because the two are essentially the same thing. There are a number of security behaviors that we're trying to help you, increase your knowledge on, help you influence, and making sure that you behave in a safe way, not just for your organization, but for yourself, your home, your family, your friends. It's one problem really that we're trying to solve here, and that's a problem that translates into your personal life too. So why looking at it from an organizational perspective when it's actually a lot more than that? So at CyberSafe, we're very conscious of this, and we're trying to make the content relatable for people and link it to something personal or something that they might have experienced themselves, or someone they know or know about experienced, and we just want them to empathize with what they read and understand how this is important for them and take the organization out of it. Obviously, it's important, but as Caroline said it as well, it's actually one thing. We are trying to help people stay safe online by influencing security behaviors, and it's not just important from an organizational perspective.
Mm-hmm. And again, Andreas, with the, have we been wasting money for 10 years? Again, I don't believe that's true either. None of us start anything that we're doing with the perfect solution, and we haven't even got to the perfect solution yet. We're still somewhere in our infancy on creating culture. And if we hadn't have done all of these steps before, and we've done lots of things, we've tried and tested, as you well know, I'm all for creating once and using often, but I'm also aware that actually not everything is going to hit the mark. So it is about learning, it is about evolving, and that's for us as security professionals as well as our end user. I don't believe that we've told them incorrect messages. It's just our approach has been very different. And as much as I get bored of everybody mentioning the pandemic was a really, really good time to actually show that all of the things that we've done, and particularly that I can see that myself and my team have done the 5 years leading up to that, paid off dividends, because we did talk so much about what this means to you as a person, all the things that you need to do at home, and they're absolutely relatable to how you conduct yourself at work. So those things weren't wrong, they were right, but they were that one small step in the direction that we're heading. I think we'll have this conversation in 3 or 5 or 10 years, and I think again, the world and how we're managing security and our and our connections. I mean, one of my team spoke on Monday when we had a call with CyberSafe, and he was really, really passionate about that, embedding it into your everyday normal life behaviors, and that's going to be the key to the success and the key to how we continue driving and delivering essentially the same messages, but in a different way, with perhaps a slightly different nuance on why it's important.
Let me ask you something on that one, because I think that's very, very interesting because before I ask you, to say something about what's in your eyes the right way to do, I saw a comparison. I don't know who did it, who said, look, just because I know something, that doesn't mean I change my behavior. Just because I know chocolate is not healthy for me, I still love it and eat it, right? The same is true for smoking. The same is true with all other kind of things. I should move more. Yes, I need to now, not just from my Apple Watch to tell me, oh yeah, you're sitting too long, right? This kind of stuff. So knowledge seems not to be the number one trigger, right? So it's more, there are other things like repeated notches, which changes behavior. And then there's on the other side, often the approaches like, we do games, we do laughing, or we make gamification and jokes and all that stuff. So in your eyes, both eyes, what's the right way to start it? What's the right way to get these messages across from your point of view? Caroline, start if you like.
I would just like to reflect on your point between, yes, we know what to do, but we still don't do it. This gap between, knowing and doing, between like knowledge and action, and the way we approach this at CyberSafe. And I'm pretty sure, Andreas, Caroline, you heard this many, many times before, is the COMBI framework. Which is essentially a behavior change framework. So if we think of behavior change, we need to have the capability, opportunity, and a motivation for, a behavior change to occur. And training, so essentially awareness training is just a part of this, which is the capability. So we give people the knowledge, we give people the awareness, but we don't know the motivations and the opportunities behind the behaviors. And that is, I think, what is important to focus on, the whys behind behaviors, security behaviors, why people don't do what they say they do.
Just make it real for me, because I just had a discussion this morning with an insurance company where they say, oh, we invest our money in flyers, in giveaways, and in continuously having our message all over the world, place everywhere in different languages. Is this what you are talking about, or is it more practical, right? What is it? How do you get messages across that they on one side become knowledge, but more importantly, change or address a behavior so that you address human cyber risk?
Okay, so just like taking a few steps back, do you even know that what you're doing works? Have you ever?
Sure not. No, that's clear, right? But because that was my challenge this morning as well. Yeah. And I said, but that's what we do, since everyone knows it, is used to it, and so we just continue it, right? So no, totally not. They don't. Well, no one does, most probably.
But I think that is potentially part of the problem, right? We measure a lot of different things that is compliance based. So we measure click rates, we measure completion rates, but that information actually doesn't really tell us much about people's behaviors. These are just scores on, completing test questions and reading modules, but actually they mean a lot more if you look at your data differently. People clicking on phishing emails means more than just, increase or decrease in click rates. You can actually look at what phishing emails are people more susceptible to, or anything. You are already measuring probably a lot of different things, and potentially you're not looking at what you're measuring the right way, and you don't know what works. So again, taking a few steps back and looking at actually what's effective and what's working for your people or different people in the organization is important, and or why it doesn't work.
Let me get back to this whole phishing topic, because that's very close to my heart. But Caroline, from your point of view, what are the steps which you said, or which you learned worked, where people got engaged, and where you really saw changes?
Well, I think it's really interesting, just to kind of pick up on your insurance chat this morning. I think there is a space for all of the above, all of the things that you said that he does, all of the things that Suzie mentioned. And I think, yes, we've got the compliance part of it. We've got the awareness, which is the flyers, the desktop savers, the nice badge, the shiny bag, the water bottle, whatever. That's just having it as a visual reminder. And then we've got the learnings that we get from whether it's phishing, which, to be quite honest, phishing is the bane of my life. I just think that there are so many people that think cyber awareness is just phishing. It's not just phishing. And I would say, from my experience, it's the smallest part of my world, but it takes up this much of the team's time, where actually there are more things that we could be doing. When I see that things are working, I mean, we've taken an approach this year. We actually surveyed a whole bunch of our cyber ambassadors and people who are really engaged, and some who have been engaged and not engaged anymore. We actually asked them what they like, what they want, what makes them look at this, what are the things that are important to them. And that, coupled with, we are consumers of the CyberSafe platform, with the culture survey that we have on there, actually gives us a really good picture and a really good temperature of what's working, what's not working. And, I think sometimes the anecdotal feedback is underestimated in the culture change. So, I give one of my favourite examples. Andreas mentioned earlier about some books we've created. We're on series 3 of our little books of cybersecurity stories at home and cybersecurity stories at work. And I think that the culture is shifting the dial when you have multiple people. I never realised we had so many scout leaders working in our organisation who actually come back to me and said, this is absolutely perfect. Can we use the at-home book, because there is a cyber badge within the scout group, and actually we can learn this because we really understood it and we got it, and we know that this can be used. For me, that was so powerful. And when I heard it once, I thought, oh, that's really nice. When I heard it several times, it's like, actually, we are shifting the culture, because people are actually relating. I mean, irrespective of the fact that it was called Little Book of Cybersecurity Stories at Home, they are actually relating that to, this is really important in our personal life. And actually, we don't want to keep it to ourselves. We have to tell as many people as we can. And that is, that's not something that I can put into any data. That's not something that I can demonstrate in a spreadsheet or show for a compliance reason. That I can show as demonstrable change in behaviours and culture within my organisation.
Okay, so it's a little bit of everything, right? Use every channel which you can, right? So that means we also still look for the power and support from above, right? So, because you and I, we had this funny story with our COO, right? Which before he felt to our clicking thing was totally against it. All of a sudden he became the biggest advocate, experience himself how easy it is to fall victim. And he became our biggest advocate for all the activities, right?
It was one of the most wonderful things that could have happened.
I agree. So that means, but at the same time, that there is no right or wrong, right?
No, there isn't any right or wrong. And I think it's with everything. You have to go with trial and error. But when you're going with either of them, trial, you kind of reap the successes, and you need to kind of not just rest on your laurels with that. And then again, with things where they haven't worked out, I hate the word fail or failure in any sense, have perhaps not been as successful as you would have liked, then you need to explore that as well. And that goes back to kind of Suzie and how she would approach things from her perspective. Look at that, don't just see it as data that's good for a compliance or whatever. Actually delve a little bit deeper and kind of see what that does. What was that trigger? And, even when, ask people, what was the trigger? And, when we go back to our favorite topic of phishing, it's people's jobs to read and open email. It's going to happen from time to time. You are going to click something because of that particular moment. I go back to 2018 and I wrote a summer dress code email on a cold February evening in my kitchen. Little did I know that the day that was going to be released in July, it was going to be the hottest day in Switzerland, in London, in New York, and in Poland. And it was scheduled to arrive at 8:45 local time. And that had the highest click rate of any phishing campaign we have ever done, because people have taken that long journey in on a hot day, and their motivation for opening that was, wow, I'm boiled already. What's this summer dress code? Of course, they opened it up, they clicked on it. And Would they have clicked on that if I'd have sent that to them in autumn or winter? No, it was about the timeliness of it. So, you know, do I then look that everybody was unsuccessful? No, that was actually quite a natural human behavior, and we understand that. When I send, you know, whatever the scenarios, you know, we look at real world things that are happening, as long as, you know, we like to be quite creative with some of them. And it's really interesting, the different emotional triggers that people will have. And again, we have to remember, it's people's jobs in a corporate world to open, read an email, and sometimes they might be a little bit obscure.
Totally. But, you know, I also remember how long it took us to explain everyone why so many people clicked, right? So that's a very different stuff. So, you know, one other thing, because there's a nice question which just came in. Guys, you know, I see there are plenty of people listening in here who really know what's going on. So the experts in the fields as well. Marcus just came up with a good question to both of you. How do you deal with the burden of multi-crises that are currently occupying the staff? If you look at our organization as a socio-technology system, then you also have to consider these issues, or rather not. So, you know, what is it? I think you just went a little bit to it, right? Momentum, timeliness. But in this case, what Marcus mentioned is more about, you know, being Corona, changes in management, market changes. You know, how much of that change in market situation influence behaviors of people? This is something we want to use, because the timeliness, you were lucky, right? This was just months in between. But is this something, is this a trigger point which can be positively used, also become a big mistake?
Marcus, that's a really, really good question. And I'm probably going to hand over to Suzie to kind of answer this from hers. But, you know, I think from a moral perspective, you know, we always have to be really sensitive in any corporate organization when you're looking at those real kind of geopolitical or organizational changes and such. And I always do slightly fear that you could be undoing a lot of the good work that you're doing if you put too much of that angle and that pressure into what you're doing. Again, Suzie, I'm really interested in yours. Again, this is just my kind of personal emotional feel towards it. There's no science or any research behind it. It's just kind of that whole moral compass and moral standing.
I honestly would just like to reiterate your points about staying sensitive and careful with and not misusing situations, for sure. And I would like to actually potentially think about this a little bit longer, because I don't want to say anything that's rushed. So maybe I will just reach out to you after the webinar. But just it's a very good question, also a very tricky one, because yes, you need to ask yourself what you are trying to achieve here, and what the best way of doing that is. And also reflecting on Caroline's point, I actually also really enjoy sharing a personal example, a family member who was recently tricked, who read every single module that I produced to CyberSafe in my 2.5-year career, and it was a hot day juggling uni work and working in a cafe at the same time. And yes, she clicked on actually a text message. Yes, she shared her personal details. We did sort it out. It's just such a great example to illustrate that it happens to anyone. It can happen to anyone. And yes, you do know. We all know, I know too, but obviously there are situations when we're cognitively overwhelmed, we're just not paying attention, there's something else going on in our lives, and these are just mistakes that can happen to anyone. But normalizing these mistakes and talking about them as learning opportunities. So for example, what happened to you with the phishing emails, I think it's actually such a great story, and I would use this example to talk to people about how you don't need to be scared. This is not something that's the end of the world. It's probably going to happen. We are targeted by phishing emails all the time, but just normalize the conversation around it and help people understand that this is why it's important to learn about these things, and also accept if mistakes happen, and then know what to do when these mistakes happen, and how to manage expectations afterwards.
Before I go,
I really like that. So the normalize it, use the kind of things where you may not have been successful as learning opportunities, and absolutely no stick whatsoever, because we will never reach our objective, and it shouldn't be our individual organizational objectives. I mean, this is definitely a global movement for culture.
But let me go on now to phishing, right? But before we do that, Marcus, I will make sure that Suzie gets your context so that we can go. By the way, if the guys, in case you don't know, Marcus Bayer takes care at Swisscom for cyber training and awareness, and just to help him out as well, because he and the team does a really nice podcast called Security Awareness Insider, which you can find everywhere where podcasts is. It's in German, so everyone who is capable of listening to German, it's really insightful. I think you, Marcus, I'm not sure, it's 13th, right? You did 13th things already. So therefore, if anyone is interested, capable of German, look for the podcast or Security Awareness Insider. It's absolutely worth doing it. But my favorite topic, phishing, everyone who knows me knows that I think phishing is a complete waste of time. And this is completely just proving that I can craft a phishing email nicely. If I know enough information about someone, I believe I can phish everyone with enough energy and knowledge. But at the same time, it's the number one thing we do and we measure when it comes to training and awareness, right? Because everyone is so heavily interested in click rate and repeated clickers. Some call them repeated offenders, and some people want to fire everyone until they click themselves the second time and things like that. So we all have gone through this. Ladies, what's your 5 cents on phishing?
Well, full well, Andreas, I cannot abide the words failures, offenders, or any such language like that. As Suzie just said in the last one, it's a mistake. We're human, we make mistakes. The phrase, it's human to err, it is true in any situation. It is, again, about positive reinforcement. It is about showing people what's going to happen. Has phishing had its day? I wonder this quite a lot myself. I'm not a fan of phishing being the main driver for cyber awareness, because I don't think it changes culture. And kind of slightly on Marcus's point there, again, a lot can be going on in an organization, and you suddenly send this phishing email and you can undo 3, 5, 10 years of really good work of culture building by just something like that landing at the wrong time, and that emotional feeling of you're trying to trap me, you're trying to fool me, you're trying to make me look incompetent or whatever. I think again, every organization has different, I sometimes get asked, why don't you do it more? Why don't you X organization does it bi-weekly or monthly, or, we should be doing this. I don't know that there's a right or wrong answer. What I do know is I think for years it's been measured in the wrong way, and people have always focused on success rate. And isn't it great to go into a presentation and claim 97% success rate? So that means that 3% of your organization clicked or was susceptible. 97%, that's so not true, because I don't think an organization is saying that they've got 97% of people who are doing the right thing, and the right thing is to report it in whichever manner your organization has. And I will be amazed at anybody who's actually reporting that. And there are different measures on this. There are measures of the people who clicked, and if we are going to continue to phish people, then we don't shout at them, we don't point a stick at them, we don't threaten them with any kind of disciplinaries or things. We actually take them through step by step. And again, as Cybersecurity Awareness Month this year, back to basics, we go back to basics. What is it? How can it be? What are the key things that you can look out for? It's not about punishing them. Then we've got the people who report, and we should always celebrate the people who report. You know, we do. We send out a well done every time to all of the people who've successfully reported phishing, but we don't leave it there. Of course, we signpost them to more, because, you know, next time they may become susceptible. We also, to the people who've clicked and then subsequently reported, we actually send them a kind of semi-well done as well, because that just shows that, you know, we are human. Sometimes we make a mistake, and then if you've retrospectively then done the right thing, actually that's not a bad thing. That shows that you know that you're in an organization, in a culture where if you do something wrong, actually you can tell someone about it after the event. And then the number that I always find really interesting, and we just don't concentrate on this enough in this world, is, you know, say you have 50% of people who've reported, you've got 5% of people who've clicked, you've got 45% of people who've done nothing. So actually, my concern is, you know, is there a lack of understanding? Is it just an ignoring? And, you know, this is a behaviour that we need to look at as well, because, you know, are people just ignoring it? Are they just relying on somebody else? Are they just, you know, not really that concerned? So again, we've started adding this into our post-phishing communications of, you know, we'll tell people we sent them an email on this date, and we noticed that they thankfully didn't click, but they also didn't respond, and then we'll talk to them again, going back to basics about why it's really important, what types of things will happen. So I think that side of it is really interesting, and that side we should carry on. But again, we can't do that if we're not sending out the phishing emails in that situation. So I just think we need to be mindful of what we're reporting, how we're reporting, and actually being open and honest with the reports, you know, how things are, how people respond. I mean, obviously not naming names, but again, you know, letting people know, actually, as an organisation, you know, our response rate is really good, and that's because you're doing this, this and this, but we need to continue doing this. And that then makes it still valid, in my view.
Suzie, I know it's very close to your heart, especially the data analytics behind. So what's your point?
Yes, Caroline, you mentioned so many interesting points, and I want to reflect on all of them. Yes, celebrating wins. I think it's so important, and I know I keep saying a human, like, empathetic approach, but that is really the way to go about this, because it's not it's not an organizational problem. It's a problem for everyone. Cybersecurity is important, and again, phishing is just one security behavior that I also like talking about, but there are plenty others, and also you know, like 4 or 5 more particularly important ones that we want people essentially to adopt in their daily lives and you know, perform effectively. But yes, phishing is important, and again, agreeing with your points around looking at what we're measuring and how we're measuring. The click rates are a great data point, a great measurement, but again, it means a lot more than that. You need to look at why people click on things, who are the people who click on things, and again, just investigate the data in a little bit more depth, and as well as sharing wins, which is important. Share the you know, potential failures as well, because looking at them as learning opportunities and experiences will help people looking at them that way too, and will help them implement these behaviors that we want them to actually do. Fear-based messaging and, you know, the sticks approach doesn't work. It just doesn't work. We know this. There's a lot of academic research on this, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people experience it at firsthand, that it just doesn't work. You need to talk about cybersecurity in a positive, inclusive, and relatable way, and talk about the failures, the difficulties, and let people share the experiences that they have. Because if people feel that it's their own, they're more likely to change, and are more likely to adapt. And this is how you can help them, just making it relatable and very human centric.
And again, those relatable things are so easy. in terms of phishing, because again, we all focus on the results within our organization, but actually tell people within their region how they can report a phishing email if it looks like it comes from a government institution or a bank or another organization, and actually making them feel empowered in that way, because then it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning. This then becomes that whole of life thing, and you know how to do it there. So if my bank, I get many emails that look like from my UK bank account, and that look like they are from there, but they're not. So I know, because of what we do, I go onto their, I log into my account, and then I actually report what the issue was. But, we need to be doing more of this as well, because then it does become that, oh, this is all of my life. It's not just my 9 to 5. I know no one actually works 9 to 5, but, figuratively speaking, it's not just that life. It's my 24-hour, always connected to some kind of device or technology life.
Exactly. And like with phishing, essentially what we want people to do is that every time they open an email, we would want them to, check for signs of phishing. Measuring the click rates and how many phishing emails they reported isn't just the only way to actually help people with this behavior. You can also nudge this behavior by just, using a very particular time of the day, tailored to the organization or the people that you actually want to help. Just nudge them around. Have you checked your emails yet? Or do you know what the signs of, phishing emails are, or any other techniques? So there's not just one way to actually help people with this particular behavior. Measuring the click rates and the reports is just one way.
Suzie, before we go into measurement, because I think there is a lot we want to talk, or we may want to talk about that one as well. There is a comment here as well which says, look, agree with you that phishing for assessment reason is bullshit. But however, in order to keep awareness high and to point out the topic again and again, well done phishing training can be very helpful. And the person and I had already in the past discussions about that, because I would rather use Slack, Teams, WhatsApp, whatever, things which people use every day, and nudge them about the importance of cyber, rather than using a phishing mail, because that's always, oh, someone tries to trick me, right? But okay, there are different opinions, there are different ways, but what's your point? Is that a valid point, that using phishing as a vehicle for keeping the message about cyber awareness and the importance of it up, is that a valid, from your point of view? I know there is no black and white yes or no, but is this a valid thing, or is this just overkill? This is in your eyes, the wrong approach?
Oh, who is this to? Both of us? Or to
Doesn't
Suzie?
matter, whoever wants to answer it first.
It has a place. I don't think it's the most important part of building cyber awareness and culture.
Okay, and Suzie, what's your point?
I don't like yes or no questions. I think
I know.
I think it's important. I think it's important, just like everything is, but I think there's potentially too much emphasis on it, the way it is measured at the moment, as it is right now. But
you see a value in using it as an awareness vehicle to keep the messaging up and say, look, oh yeah, cyber security is important. We are an important group. You need to take care. So, this tricking fear thing is, you say it's a valid way to do it, if this is okay within the culture of the organization. Because I don't think so, but who am I to judge this one?
I think if used effectively, phishing is important. Delivering awareness, not necessarily. Is this an academic enough answer?
Yeah, no. I don't want to put anyone into a corner, right? Because again, there is no right or wrong answer.
Yeah, I very much like staying in a gray area, because everyone's different. We don't know what works for everyone. The reasons for person A for clicking on an email is different from person B. The same way, the same thing is true for all security behaviors, password use, MFA. Some behaviors, some people find more challenging, or they don't understand it, and some are easier. So I'm very reluctant to give a yes or no answer here.
The reason why I'm against it is because I always feel tricked. right? So, oh, it's another of these tricking emails trying or click here and then we get you into trouble. Just to use this kind of tricking mechanism to keep the momentum of awareness, because none of us, with the exception of most of the people on this call, do security for the purpose in life or for getting paid for it, right? Everyone is there to do a job, and part of it, as Caroline mentioned at the beginning, is to read emails and to do the job. And most of the people, I guess, they want to do the right thing, and so just trying to trick them, just to keep a momentum for the cyber awareness topic. I personally think I would be rather careful and rather use things like Slack or Teams and nudge people with this, or background screens in the browser when they open up and saying, hey, phishing is everywhere, you are an attractive target, things like that, for me would work better. But again, this is Caroline, say it.
Yeah, I really want to ask you a question on this, because it's really interesting, because my view is that it should be a component. It shouldn't be the overarching basis of any program. And I'm kind of quite sad if that's just someone's awareness program. That breaks my heart, because there's so many more things to do. But the interesting comment that you said there, so again, you were looking at it from an organizational security standpoint. You feel tricked, you feel like somebody's trying to make you non-compliant, whatever. How do you feel when you get it in your home inbox, when it's a phishing email that's targeted your personal email address? Because it's not your organization then that are trying to trick you. So this is where this is the bit that will never let me let go of phishing campaigns completely, because
we cannot do it anyhow, right? It's a regulatory requirement.
I'm empowering somebody to actually understand, know what to look for, whatever, so that when they log on to their Google or their Gmail or their Yahoo, whatever it may be, they're actually going back to, it's an all of life behavior. It's not a 9-to-5 behavior and an outside of work behavior. It's an everything. So in that respect, that's why I would continue with phishing, because I'm giving that whole of life knowledge.
I agree with you. The reason why I'm skeptical is there are two elements to it. One is my personal thing, because that's the way I feel. And I see more and more, me being an investor and talking a lot with VCs, the VC community believes that the companies which are just offering phishing as a pure service will all be consolidated in the next 3 to 5 years maximum, because this market will not exist anymore in that time frame. And that's an interesting point of view, right? Not necessarily that I agree with it, but if the investment community makes such statements, that's a pretty strong one. And I'm thinking, okay, there is something. But given that we only have 12 minutes left, let us quickly go before we end to the topic of measurement. Because, again, as we said, and I think Suzie, you illustrate this very well, reporting just on click rates is useless. There's so much more. What is it? What should we measure on? What is the future of how to measure cyber behavior and human cyber risks? Whoever wants to start first. Okay, Suzie, you start.
I'm happy to kick off. Yeah, so obviously there are different things you can measure when it comes to security behaviors. So what people measure right now are obviously compliance-based stuff like clicking rates and module completions, but you can turn it around and actually measure knowledge of security behaviors that people are presented with. You can also measure self-reported behaviors as well. But again, those are just self-reports, not just, they're super valuable data, but you can also actually start measuring the behaviors. So using potential integrations, you can actually see whether people perform the behaviors that you help them with. You can also nudge people on particular behavior, and you can measure the effectiveness of those nudges and the performance of the behaviors combined with the knowledge of the behaviors. So actually there are a lot of different things that you can start measuring here and see what works. And what works particularly for your organization. But I think Caroline can answer this one more.
Before we go there, let me challenge one thing, because as you know, I'm a pretty big fan of risk-focused measurement and reporting, right? And if my main concern and why I'm doing phishing is, for example, ransomware, just to pick one, right? Instead of just crafting an email and say, look here, I'm trying to steal credentials from people, I would rather say, look, do this, click, but I would also check in parallel how many people use corporate IDs on social media platforms like LinkedIn, Facebook, whatsoever. I would want to measure how people deal with their own privacy, right? Have they done modules, for example, like the home environment? Are they easily sharing? How much social engineering work? And there are so many numbers out there which you can easily use. An organization has so much data about identities and behaviors in general, which can be included. Isn't that the much better approach, saying instead of, I try to measure everything and a little bit here and a little bit there, to really focus on certain risks, like in this case, malware infection, and get behaviors mapped to this risk and start looking for campaigns, messaging, and measurement along a certain risk instead of, the people have clicked 3%.
So I would say this is definitely a conversation actually that I had with Oz, Alashi from CyberSafe, and a few of the team on Monday, and we were definitely talking on this is one of the, we were talking about doing things differently 10 years ago to how we're doing it, and this is definitely the approach to go forward, to actually look at what, when we're looking at the organizational security, what a risk-based almost score looks for or looks like for each individual, and then shaping the knowledge based on those particular instances that you say, malware, ransomware, and even those things, we can look at broad things that, do people have USB access? Do they have access to printing at home? Have they been susceptible to a real phishing email? And then with all of those things that we can measure, then we can look at the knowledge that we're providing them, and then we can look, how effective this is in terms of how they're using things, very much from an organizational perspective. I mean, it would be great if every organization could give each of their employees once a year something that looks like an Experian or ClearScore credit score, but it's your cyber risk score. I mean, I would love to get to that place where I can actually show everybody, these have been your interactions, these are the things that put you at risk, these are the things that you've done to help mitigate it, and actually this triangle is where you still need to go, and kind of keep looping back to that. I mean, for me, that would be an amazing next step forward in building a powerful program.
No, totally agree. Because I personally believe that's the future, right? Otherwise, we will just continue in the dark. And I had the pleasure to read some of the NIST drafts, what they want to do in their next version, and what they want to ask the industry to measure on, and that's exactly going in this direction. So I have a lot of hope that the next iteration on the standard frameworks like NIST and ISO will ask us exactly things in this direction. But before we come to a close, I have one question, because something which is always coming back is, gamification and all that stuff. A campaign needs to be exciting, emotional, and funny to make things stick, or to make people be successful, and a campaign being successful. And while I'm agreeing at one end, I have on my own side the experience, I can laugh my ass off. That doesn't mean that I remember it. I can be super funny and excited. It is so cool, but nothing necessarily which change my behavior. I get the point why it's important, why it's much more entertaining and much more fun to do something which I like and is cool. But from your both point of view, does excitement, entertainment, fun, all that stuff make us more open, more accessible for the things which we need to learn or which we need to have around cybersecurity?
Well, Andreas, your shirt looks good on you, but it might not look so good on me.
For sure not.
So,
because your stripe is much more cooler.
So this is my approach to awareness campaigns and looking at behaviours. Fun is great for some people. Comedy works for some people. A memorable, quirky video works for some people. A great story works for some people. Technical hard facts in a white paper work for some people. A little email works for some people. A nudge on a Slack, WhatsApp, Teams works for some people. There will never be one thing that is going to suit everybody. And it is our job to understand what works for different people and actually keep on tailoring it to that way, because you're never going to get somebody to like something if they have no humor and they don't like comedy and they like something that's very, very technically written. So we have to adapt. It's the same message. It can be presented in a number of ways to actually make sure that, you know, you've got 2 or 3 options and one of those is going to hit the right audience.
So it's a flavor.
So if I take that for an example, you know, we've got some fun, quirky videos with our star Bruce Van Dangle, and he gets caught out on a business email compromise. I've got exactly the same message in a cyber manual that actually works for the people who wouldn't be appealed to that. And again, the same as how we work on the CyberSafe platform. We've got some of our users who like the story based, we've got some who like kind of video and content based, and actually it's about giving people those opportunities to go, actually I'm going to pick and mix. I mean, you know, everybody loves going into the sweet store where you can have a little bit of this or a little bit of that, whatever takes your fancy. And I just very much see that what we should offer should have the allowance to do that.
Cool. Suzie, just to wrap it up, what are your 3 points of action where you say, look here, if you want, or if people remember only these 1, 2, 3 things from today, what are they for you?
Oh, I really wanted to talk about gamification a little bit.
Go for it.
And just say that, yes, just like Caroline said, answering your question, first of all, gamification is the transfer of elements that are used in games to non-game context. So it's not just necessarily fun stuff and gaming, but as Caroline mentioned, at CyberSafe, we use storytelling, which is like following a continuous storyline, and a character are parts of a game, which we're using in our training because people learn differently. So just to reiterate the points, I think there is not one approach here or one thing that we can do, all can do and change the industry. I think we need to appreciate individual differences and that people learn differently and different things work for different people, and start looking at these differences and making sure that what we're doing works for the people that we're doing them for, and there's not just one thing that we can do.
So it's a flavor thing, right?
Yeah, to improve security behaviors. So yes, you might not like fun content, but there are a lot of people who potentially do. And also
agree.
Exactly. We learn differently, so we consume information differently, and we just need to appreciate that and look out for that and use an empathetic approach to communicate and talk about cybersecurity. And I think this is about 4 points.
Cool. So, Caroline, from your point of view, what are the things to remember?
I think one of the words that's come up quite a lot in this is about having empathy when we're doing this. It's about thinking about, there's a real person, that person's me, that person's you. Just because we do this as our role doesn't mean to say that we're any less susceptible. So I think that's it. You know, keep the person. You know, they're not users. They're not the the end user or the non-compliant person. We're human beings, and behaviours are only as good as the passion and the empathy and the care that you put into them. I think, and the last thing that I think has been really clear. We are still. Doesn't matter whether you've been in it for 10 years, 20 years, or 10 months, we are still on very much a step of a journey into doing this. And I really do believe it's not about you, it's not about Suzie, it's not about Marcus or other people, Andy, whoever is on the call. We have to, this is kind of like a standing together. This has got
to be a community thing.
It's a community. It's a global thing. I mean, we need to make the essence and the power of cybersecurity the next the next climate change to have that momentum. But that's for all of us collectively. And we all have our opinions on this, and I'm sure there's many people on this call who will agree with some of the things we've said, but who don't agree with all of them. And again, we need to learn from each other. We don't need to poo-poo anyone's thoughts or comments. We need to work together and actually make this something that is tangible, measurable, and a real influence to our society.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that's a very nice wrap up to close the thing. Lars just wrote a white paper on measurement is key for cybersecurity as cyber awareness, how to create and demonstrate value of a cybersecurity awareness program. Just to wrap up some of the ideas which you guys also just mentioned there. Just an idea, right? A pool of things which have worked or which that are also going in this direction for the future. So therefore, we will do a next CISO talk somewhere in November. We haven't defined yet when it is exactly again. So everyone who wants to join us there or join me there again, happy and welcome. And then, ladies, thank you very, very much. It was really interesting, informative. And so we will do the recording now and then make it available also offline for the people who did not join, who wants to listen to us then later on. So thank you very much. And to all the participants, have a wonderful remaining day. Hopefully it's the same kind of sunny, warm 26-degree sunshine day like I have here around me. And then wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Caroline. Thanks, Suzie.
Thank you. Bye.